a regular meeting of Livingston's Planning Board. A notice of this meeting has been published in accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act.
Thank you. Can you please take the roll?
Mr. Ratner,
He's here.
Mr. Lewis,
Here.
Ms. Cucci,
Here.
Mr. Meinhardt,
Here.
Mr. Fernandez.
Here.
That represents our quorum tonight. We do have our board attorney, Mr. Valerio.
Thank you. And if you can please call the first matter.
The matter that's scheduled for this evening is preliminary and final site plan for 107 East Mount Pleasant Avenue, Block 1512, Lot 12, application number 2024-54-PFSPV, EAS Livingston LLC, located in the B1 Zone District.
Thank you. So welcome, everybody. And just to review the general procedure for tonight's hearing, the applicant is represented by an attorney who will explain the application. The applicant's attorney will call one or more witnesses to give sworn testimony in support of the application. Members of the board may ask the witness questions, and when the attorney for the applicant has no more questions for a witness, interested parties in favor of or in opposition to the application may ask questions of the witness about the witness's testimony. When all the applicant's witnesses have testified, and if there is an entity or group formally appearing as a party in support of or in opposition to the application, that party may call witnesses. When all the witnesses of all the parties have been heard, members of the public may give sworn statements for or against the application. So thank you. If you could enter your appearance for the record.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Thomas Troutner. I'm an attorney from the law firm of Chiesa, Shahenian, and Gia Tomasi here on behalf of the applicant.
Thank you. It's all yours.
Thank you. So we're here this evening, as has been described, for preliminary and final major site plan approval, seeking also some bulk variances to modify an existing car wash, provide vacuum stall spaces, and improve site circulation on the property, which is located at 107 East Mount Pleasant Avenue, currently designated as Lot 12, Block 1512 in the tax maps of the Township of Livingston. The property is located in the B1 General Business District. It's presently developed with a 1- and 2-story multi-tenant commercial building and a car wash building, which are all going to remain. Car washes are conditionally permitted uses in the B1 zone, and we believe we meet the conditions for the use. We are seeking some bulk variances, which are identified in the board professionals, the planner specifically report. Particularly related to parking stall dimension and signage, and we'll get into that with our testimony of our professionals. We have with us tonight 3 witnesses, although maybe only 2 are necessary. We have Lawrence Kakshori, who's a representative of the applicant, EAS Livingston LLC. We have Robert Frood from Dynamic Engineering. He's our civil engineer as well as our professional planner. And we have Corey Chase from Dynamic Engineering, our traffic engineer, if the board deems necessary that it wants to hear some traffic testimony. So, Mr. Chairman, with your permission, I would seek to swear in Mr. Kakshori just as a fact witness and really just to give an overview of who the applicant is and why we're here.
Sure, and then before we start, there was a environmental impact statement waiver application. I think the engineer, the township engineer, recommended approving it. Is there any objection to approving the waiver? Seeing none, thank you. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So with that, Mr. Kakshori is here, so we'd seek to have him sworn in.
Raise your right hand, please. You swear the testimony given this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Please give us your full name and spell your last name for the record.
Lawrence Kakshuri. Last name is Khakshori.
Mr. Kakshori, could you briefly just give the board an overview of your relationship with the applicant, your role there, and a little bit of the background of the company and why your company's here tonight as an applicant seeking site plan approval for this car wash facility?
Sure. So, good evening, everyone. I'm one of the principals of EAS Livingston LLC, where our company is called Express Auto Spa. Our company, our focus is we acquire existing full-service car washes in New York and New Jersey. Typically, they are more run down, in need of capex and refurbishment. Where upon acquisition, we come in, we invest in capex and technology to renovate, automate, and refurbish the existing car washes. in all of our locations, our goal is to improve site circulation and also improve the customer experience, namely in the customer getting the biggest advantage to the customer in our model is the customer wait time is reduced significantly, and we also have a monthly membership model that we provide to customers where they can, for one low monthly price, use the car wash as many times as they want a month. And so we pride ourselves on really being passionate about what we do. We run the company as a family business. That's how we look at it. And so every decision is really scrutinized. We put a lot of time and effort in all of our locations. And one thing that we buy locations in different demographics in different areas in New Jersey, and so we really mold each location to that specific township. And we're very excited about this location, and excited to be a part of the Livingston community.
No further questions for,
Is the model that you have, and looking at it before, maybe somebody will get into it in testimony later on, the vacuums, when are they operational?
They're operational only during business hours.
Okay, all right. And I guess we'll hear more about that later on. Okay,
absolutely.
great, thank you.
Are you currently the operator of this car wash, or are you a contract purchaser? What's your...
Oh, in terms of your relationship to the site?
Yeah, we're under contract, so we don't currently own it.
Any other questions? Thank you. We'll move on to your next witness then.
Great, thank you. I'm not sure if there are any questions from the public, but I'm assuming probably not. But
I didn't see any. Are there any? I didn't see anybody. But are there any questions for this witness from members of the public? Seeing none. Thank you.
perfect, thank you. Next, I would call up our civil engineer and planner, Robert Frood. Mr. Chairman, with your permission, I'd like to have Mr. Frood sworn in, and then I'd seek to qualify him as an expert, both as a civil engineer and as a professional planner.
This is, engineering and planning.
Engineering and planning.
You raise your right hand, please. You swear the testimony you're about to give in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Okay, please give us your full name and spell your last name for the record.
Robert Frood, F as in Frank, R-E-U-D. Professional address is Dynamic Engineering, 1904 Main Street in Lake Como, New Jersey.
Mr. Frood, if you would, can you give the board a brief overview of your educational and professional background that would seek to qualify you in expert in both civil engineering and planning?
Certainly. So I have a Bachelor of Science degree in Civil Engineering from Lehigh University. That was over 30 years ago. I've been practicing civil engineering and site plan design since that point. I'm licensed since 1999 in New Jersey and several other states in the region. I've testified as an engineer and been accepted as a planner as an engineer in over 100 municipalities throughout the state. Actually, my first time in Livingston. So happy to be here tonight for my first time. As a planner, I am a licensed professional planner by examination. I have been accepted as a professional planner in dozens of municipalities throughout the state.
Any questions from the board? Thank you. The board accepts you as an expert in engineering and planning.
Thank you. So, Mr. Frood, if you would, can you give the board an overview of the site? And there's I believe in the folder that's marked exhibits. Yes, we have some pre-marked exhibits. The first one is Exhibit A1. It's a surrounding area exhibit, and I'll let Mr. Frood describe it.
Oop, that came back up. Okay, so thank you. This is A1. It's entitled Surrounding Area Exhibit. It has today's date, 12/3/24, for preparation. What you see here is the site and the surrounding area from a Google map from the spring, from April of this year. You can see Route 10 runs east to west through the middle of the page. North is at the top. Livingston Avenue intersects Route 10 just on the left side of the page, so that gives you some reference. We're a little bit to the east here, about a quarter mile east of that intersection, again, at that existing retail area. You can see in the blue lines are the zone lines throughout here. From our site to the east along Route 10 is the commercial corridor of the B1 zone and multiple various retail uses within that area as you extend up and to Livingston Avenue. To the north, Fellswood Drive and Glendale Avenue, and the residential zones here in the R4 zone surround the property to the north. As you go east on Route 10, various mix of commercial uses as it transitions into some more residential. And again, opposite Route 10, more of the B1 band of commercial along Route 10 with some residential to the east and beyond. The property is outlined in yellow here. That is Block 1512, Lot 12, 107 East Mount Pleasant Avenue. Again, it's in the B1 zone, which is a general business district, and it is about 2.3 acres in area. And I'm going to now go into, this is A2, which is an aerial map exhibit. We've now zoomed in a bit to get a better idea of what the existing conditions look like. This is a little bit different aerial image. This was taken in May of 2023. What we did here is we went back about a year and a half to when the car wash was operational to get a little better idea of seeing where the cars stack and how the circulation works. So same orientation, north is at the top of the page. You can see Route 10 towards the bottom. Again, the yellow outline is the property, about 2.3 acres. Again, there are a number of users within this building. It's a multiple-story building, about 13,440 square feet along the front of the site, on the frontage here, with various retail, office, and restaurant uses in that area. They're all existing permitted uses. The back here, as I'm circling, the back portion of the building is the car wash. That is about 5,200, 5,300 square feet in area. And that presently runs circulation-wise in an east to west direction. So as you look at the page, it's right to left is the flow through that car wash tunnel. And that's unique to what we're doing here. The circulation on site is counterclockwise. So coming in from Route 10, you have an entrance on the east side, circulate around the back of the building, and then you would come out to Route 10 again on the west side of the building. So generally a one-way counterclockwise circulation around the building. The car wash follows that east to west circulation through the tunnel. What that does is it creates the stacking for the car wash along the east property line. You can see several cars here stacked up in a queue lane backing up towards Route 10. You've got parking here for the Epi's restaurant. That is open that area. You can also see that majority of the parking lot is all open pavement. There's no islands, no landscaping, no breakup in that pavement there. So it's an extensive portion of asphalt throughout that area. In total, there's 113 parking spaces delineated on the site today within that area. It's generally a flat site. General topography runs from northeast to southwest towards Route 10. The site is generally elevated relative to the adjacent residential uses. I don't have exact elevations of the homes there, but by eye, I'd say about the second floor of that looks at the fence. So those homes are much lower than the site. They won't have any sight line into the activity on the site today or in the future. There's also limited drainage on site today, just a few inlets, mostly located closer to Route 10 on the site. Right now, utilities servicing the site, water, sewer, electric, and gas. The car wash today operates on a well, and that will continue in that capacity in the future. And that is essentially, again, the existing conditions. I'm going to now move in and start talking about the proposed conditions. And we have here the site plan rendering, Exhibit A3, with today's date, 12/3/24. This is based upon the site plans that are dated 9/24 of 2024. Again, the same orientation as previous with Route 10 at the bottom of the page. You can see the surrounding area, and you can see the improvements that are now proposed on the site. Again, the building is the same. We're not changing the footprint of the building at all. We're not changing anything with the uses in the front of the building. The only change is the car wash at the rear of the building. Primary function here is we're going to reverse the circulation in the car wash, so the cars will now go through west to east through that wash. What that does is allow us, and you can see on the plan here, a circulation lane that wraps around the back of the building and gets the queuing for the car wash out of the circulation area for the rest of the development. There's about 20, I believe 21 or 22 car stack in that area, so more than enough, in fact, sufficient for the conditional use standards for that stacking, for that to work. And I'll go into that in a little bit more detail. I just want to get the board oriented to the site. Other improvements that are proposed here throughout are reorganization of the parking in the southeast corner in front of the Eppie's Restaurant. Again, organizing that parking, keeping it separate from the drive aisle, so there's some delineation for safety and circulation and traffic patterns, and then you'll circulate around the back of the car wash area. There are some parking spaces along the rear of the lot that will remain in that two-way circulation aisle there. And then as you come to the west side of the building, much of that parking and circulation is the same. We are improving, you can see the darker area here with some handicap parking spaces. We are improving the handicap parking on site so that the spaces are compliant with ADA code. As this board may be aware, the car wash is a conditional use in the B1 zone. There are a total of 7 conditions that are applicable here. All of those conditions are satisfied with this site plan, including separation of any outdoor activities such as the vacuums from a residential property line, which is that they must be in excess of 40 feet. Further, the bulk standards for the B1 zone are satisfied. Coverages, setbacks, all of those are satisfied with this application. In fact, the coverage by the addition of the landscape islands throughout the site, we're reducing the impervious coverage by over 6% on site in an effort to improve the aesthetics in and around, especially the car wash and the entrance area by adding those islands, not only aesthetics, but safety improvements for circulation. The question that came up for the applicant about the vacuums at the rear, I'll get into that briefly here. There are 15 vacuum stalls located north of the drive-through queue, separated from that queue, separate from that area, that'll have an entrance to that area from the north drive aisle. So operationally, what's going to happen here, a car would pull into the site, get into the queue. As the applicant mentioned, as there are 2 lanes. There will be a members lane and a non-members lane that will allow members quick access through. You'll read a fob, the gate will go up, and you'll be able to continue through the queue. Non-members will have a screen where they can select what their services are and still pay with a cashless system to get through the car wash. But everything is meant to speed up that movement. Also, with the vacuums removed, that's not happening in the car wash queue. That helps, again, speed up the queue of the car wash activity by removing that vacuum from the beginning activities as a more traditional or older car wash might have. So you're going through the pay line, you're circling around, and now you're going west to east through the car wash with really your only hesitation is the queue of cars, which is moving much quicker without the vacuuming. As you come out of the car wash, you can now proceed around the back of the site and into the vacuum areas. The vacuums are all operated by a single turbine and pneumatic tubes that will perform the vacuuming. That is located in this tan area on the east or right side of the stalls. And that services all the vacuum stations. Again, as was indicated, those vacuums are only operated during the hours of business. And they are observed by managers and staff, so it is reserved for paying customers of the site. Generally, they're 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. in the winter and 6 p.m. In the summer. So really trying to stay within daylight hours, an extra hour or so in the summer. That's all week? That is all week, yes. Mm-hmm. So I believe the conditional use standard is limited to 8 to 8, and we don't expect at this point operation that would go past 6. There were some questions about the vacuum operations. Question?
Are they self-service?
The vacuums, yes, they are. Yep. Mm-hmm. So there's going to be a trash bin at each station, so if you empty your car, you can put the trash in a bin by the base of the vacuum, and then you operate the vacuum on your own.
Can one buy the vacuum, sir? Oh, sorry, can a customer buy the vacuum service without a wash?
So the vacuums are not coin operated, so that is no purchase of a vacuum.
So you have
service.
to go
So
through
you go
the-
through the wash. It's just, what we've done is we've taken that out of the operation of the circulation to speed up the process and reduce the queue line.
So how will you address just people that pull it in there and get in a vacuum and leaving without getting a car wash?
So that'll take me to, and that's a good question. Discuss briefly the employees on site. Typically, there'll be 3 or 4 employees on site. There'll be one at the entrance to the tunnel. There'll be one at the exit of the tunnel. And I guess that's also important to note that this is because it is full serve, you'll be moving through the tunnel in your car. You're not getting out of the car, walking through the lane as you would in an older car wash. So you're not getting out, you're not going through, that's not slowing down the process either. So there'll be an employee at each end of the tunnel. There will be an employee at the pay area to help answer any questions and keep traffic moving through the pay area, and then there will be a manager. So between the employee at the pay area who has line of sight on those vacuums and the manager who will be circulating through the car wash area at all times, they'll be able to oversee those vacuums and make sure that they are cars that are coming out. If your car's wet, you're probably just came out of the car wash. If
Okay,
your
the
car's
car
dirty,
that's leaving the car wash, and I don't know if you're the right person for this. From the looks of it, it doesn't look like it's set up. A lot of car washes will have like 3 or 4 guys with a box of towels and hand dry your whole car. That's not gonna happen here. You just get blown dry and leave. Or, I don't know, maybe you're not the guy to answer that.
Yeah. Go ahead, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, you're still under oath.
Oh, he's still under oath.
So we will have, the employee at the exit of the tunnel will give a little bit of a touch-up with a towel.
Okay.
But the only cars that can get in, the only way you could get into the vacuums is after the tunnel. If the car goes through the tunnel, it's wet and clean, right? So
Right.
if a car that's not wet and not clean goes into the vacuum stalls, then you know that they didn't go through the tunnel. And then after the vacuums, the only way to circulate from there is to go off the property. So that's the way we can monitor it.
And then in the event the queue were to get all the way back, and you have a pretty lengthy queue behind the building, but if it were to wrap around the driveway, I assume the employee there would sort of direct traffic to make sure somebody exiting the car wash. Like if the queue wrapped all the way around to where it was heading down towards Livingston, to Northfield, in theory, the person exiting the car wash, trying to make a left, could have a conflict with the queue, right?
Yeah, I mean, right now, that would be
I mean, you'd
over
have to have
21,
like
that would be over
20
21
cars or
cars in
more.
the queue, not to
Okay.
mention the
But
cars
if
in the
you ran
tunnel,
into that
so.
situation, having a guy there would help
But
facilitate.
yes, there is an employee
Stop, let
there.
this guy out or whatever, okay.
I don't, given the circulation time through there and the amount of expected customers per hour, we don't expect that would be a problem. That's one of the reasons we reversed the circulation, to avoid that conflict.
Does your service include interior cleaning of the windows and the interior of the car?
No, so the model is now that it's basically you do it on your own. So the customer stays in the vehicle throughout the entire experience. At the end of the tunnel, with the new technology in the tunnel, the car comes out now pretty much dry, based on the new enhanced technology and equipment in the tunnel. And it also has tire dressing applied, all of that. So once the car is out of the tunnel, it's basically clean and almost dry. We give a little bit of a touch-up with the employee at the exit, and then at that point, if the customer wants to do the vacuuming on their own, they can go to the self-serve vacuums. Otherwise, they can leave the lot. We don't do any interior glass or any of the interior on our own.
How long does it take for a queue of 20 cars to get through the tunnel?
If it's full, if there are actually 20 cars there, what I can say is it depends. I can let Rob answer that a little bit better, but it depends if you're on the member lane or non-member lane. This tunnel is about 160 feet. I think it would take about 3 minutes to get through the tunnel itself. But the circulation is I think Rob can answer that a little bit better.
Yeah, so, I mean, I haven't done the exact math, but with several minutes per car wash, you're gonna move a number of, 3 minutes a wash, you're gonna move.
Do you have a similar operation in any of your other car washes?
Yes.
Do you have a estimate, or have you calculated the amount of time a customer stays at the vacuum station?
We limit it to no more than 10 minutes per customer.
How
So we
long?
have 10 minutes. So we have signage, we have, and that's the role of the manager, is to kind of circulate around the site, oversee the operations, and make sure that no one's abusing the vacuums or anything like that. And so on busy days, then, you know, we make sure to enforce that.
The vacuum station is just vacuuming. There are no other supplies to clean your windows or whatever?
That's correct, just vacuuming.
Purely vacuuming?
Vacuuming and then air hoses as well for the
And then
mats.
what?
Air for the mats as well. We have mat racks, so if you want to take your mat out we have
Oh,
air
okay.
hoses for that as well.
And you said that when the car comes through the car wash, it's pretty much dry? What does
Yes.
pretty much mean?
I don't have a percentage on it, but to give you, not to bore you with the details, but
I mean, do I have to bring a towel? And-
No.
No?
no. Once your car is out of this lot, you are good to go.
Can you ask, oh, I have a question, I'm sorry. Can you just show us the flow? In other words, where the cars come in, how they get through the tunnel, and then how they get up into the vacuum area? I'm having a,
Sure. Just,
they come off of Route 10.
so I'm zoomed in a little bit just to make it a little bit easier to see. And can you all, I don't know if you can follow the mouse? Okay. So as you come in off Route 10, and any car coming into the site is going to come in off the east side entrance from Route 10. You'll come in and you will turn left into the queue lane past the exit to the wash. There'll be two lanes. The first lane is for non-members, the second lane is for members, and you'll stack there. That's where you see 21 cars delineated. That's 21 cars of stacking outside the wash. For reference, the condition use standards that we have in town request 10 cars stacking outside the wash. So we have more than double that on this facility. So as you come up, you can see all but 5 of those cars are behind the pay station. So this area here between car 6 and 7 is where you would have a touchscreen pay pad. Or if you're a member, you have a fob that you'll press, and that will open a gate, and you'll proceed through into the wash. Several minutes through the wash, as you come out, you'll turn left coming out, again circulating traffic around, and you'll be able to come to the rear of the site, at which point you can enter the vacuum area, having been a customer at the car wash. 15 stalls here for the vacuum should be more than enough given the traffic coming through the area.
Oh, and sorry to interrupt you, Rob. I was going to have Lawrence or the applicant speak to one issue in terms of the vacuum. There is a flex, it's called a flex car wash, so there's an option for a customer to, I'll let him speak to it, to pay to have an employee vacuum the car.
Yeah, so in some of our locations, the demographics are, you know, better off than in others. And so in some areas, customers are more hesitant to do the vacuums on their own. And so we let the customers basically tell us if that is high in demand or not. And so when we initially open, we're going to be running it as an express car wash. If the customers start requesting for our employees to do the interiors for them because the demand is extremely high, then what we typically do is we add this flex service, which is basically an a la carte service where if either a member or a paying customer wants our employees to do the interiors for them for a one-time fee, we can do that for them. Now, because it's going to be based on demand, when we said our initial employee count is going to be 3 to 4 employees, that was based on that, based on keeping it as an express. If we decide to do the flex later based on demand, then we may increase the employee count depending on the demand.
And if you got to that point, that service would be provided in one of the vacuum stalls?
We would
In
basically
that same location?
We would
Reserve
probably
the
reserve
one
like
row.
3 or
Okay.
4 or 2 of those vacuum
But
stalls.
it'd be within that area?
That's correct.
Not somewhere else?
Yes,
Okay.
that's correct.
May I? If a customer for the restaurant or one of the stores on that end of the building, if the parking spaces along the side are full, what are there, 12 or so there?
You're on the east side here?
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay, if they're all full and I want to have lunch there, so I have, I guess, two options, either work my way to the back of the lot, to the north side of the lot, or go all the way around and park on the west side of the lot. Is there a sidewalk across the front of the building, number one? So they
There
can-
is, yes.
They can. Number two, if I pull into the restaurant where I think I'm gonna park and it's full, I work my way back across your driveways, park there, then I walk back across driveways again. Is there any provision so that it's safe for somebody to walk from that back corner of the lot up to the front?
So we definitely took that into consideration. We know there's a number of uses here and different types of customers coming and going. Keep in mind, the existing condition today, there are a limited number of spaces on the east side of the building. And for the same condition, if you don't find a space there, you proceed around to the back or to the west side of the building. The difference is today, you're essentially in the middle of the queue of the car wash. So the benefit of what we're doing here with this application, I apologize for the record, I was on A2, I'm now back on A3. The benefit of what we're doing here is we're defining the car wash queue behind the building, so that if you were to go to a parking space at the rear of the building or be on the west side of the building, yes, the sidewalk is there today and remains to allow you to walk along the front of the building or up the side of the building. But the area that is the car wash queue and the vacuum area is now protected by curb and these landscape islands, so it separates the car wash activity from the surrounding driveways. So as you did today, or as you would in many shopping centers, yes, you would walk through a drive aisle in a small parking lot to get to the door, but it is as it is today, but I think it's much better than it is today, because we have the car wash traffic separated through the islands that are being provided.
How many parking stalls are in the restaurant area?
On the east side, there are 20 spaces.
And can you just show the circulation in and out of that area?
Sure, so what we've done there, and I'll just zoom in, I'll make it a little bit easier. So we have two ways in and out, so there's no dead end there. But again, it's separating it from the entrance. So you've got two handicap spaces defined here by one of the doors, and then a series of parking. It's all 90-degree parking, 24-foot aisles. They're 18-foot spaces that have the necessary 2-foot overhang on this side, so they're compliant, but it's all 24-foot aisles for circulation. And then, again, if you're leaving that parking field, you're going to turn left and go towards the rear of the building.
Sheet 4 shows 3 handicap spaces, I believe.
It's two.
Shows 3.
Sheet 4 is the demolition plan, so that's the existing condition.
Okay.
So we've modified and we've taken handicap spaces and put them even, so there's 2 on each side. So that's the difference from today's, what it looks like today to what it'll look like after we're done.
Did you give us the total parking spaces after this is completed?
After we're done, there will be 83 spaces. And that is consistent with what the ordinance requires based upon the combination of uses.
Have you considered some markings on the driveway somewhere so that if I'm in that northeast corner, my indication is to walk right through the car, across the car wash to the restaurant, because just based on experience, those spaces are going to fill up at the restaurant. And it just seems to me it's a little bit of a maze to figure out how to get there, and maybe some markings on the driveway to show a crosswalk or something might be appropriate.
It's something we could look into. Personally, I believe that by delineating the car wash area and traffic and putting some landscaping in there, it will separate that, so pedestrians would avoid it, but I think it's something we could look at with your engineer and planner.
Because you've got traffic coming off Route 10 into your queue through the car wash, and then back out again to get into the vacuum area.
Yes.
So your customers are twice around that outside loop.
Well, they're not twice around the loop. They're circulating through the car wash, but the point of entry into the car wash and exit from the car wash are near each other, so they're really only doubling for those couple feet there.
And if the existing conditions, I don't know if you can pull that up on what it was, A1, A2. Right along the east, immediately in front of the restaurant, I think I counted 11 spots, and you're gonna have 20 in that area.
Yeah.
But then above the 20, you're further away, so you have more spaces closer, but then above that, it's a little further, right? Is that the way
Yeah,
you view
the
it?
spaces that are against the back of the building, these will be taken by the car wash queue, correct?
Okay.
But you're correct, more spaces near the immediate entrance and less conflict.
I don't know whether you would be the guy to ask, but I'll ask it anyway, and if somebody else can testify. Have the other tenants in the building, are they aware of this plan, and any feedback, any concerns? Does anybody know if they know about it, or like the deli, or I don't know if anybody is in a position to testify to that?
Well, I can let Lauren speak to it. I know the owner, obviously, of the site consented to the application that's submitted to that, but.
All I know is the landlord has approved this. I'm not aware if the landlord has
there's
told the
individual
tenants yet.
tenants.
I'm not sure.
The driveway entrance, the driveway to the west, is that both ingress and egress?
It's not delineated. I believe the general circulation here is one way,
Okay,
but
so,
I don't believe it's all delineated.
It's currently one way.
that's what I thought, and I just wanted to.
Currently, it's a one-way, both are one-ways,
Right,
actually.
that was
It's
my
currently in
anticipation.
on the east side.
It
and-
wasn't, it's not signed so much, but yeah,
Well, there is, on the west side, there is.
there's some do not enters, yeah.
So anybody wanting to go to the stores has to go through the bypass lane?
Correct, yes.
Okay.
As they do today, they circulate around the back of the building.
And is that one lane wide, that bypass lane?
It is, yes.
Okay. And with, 20-car queuing, you're not concerned, in your, expert opinion, that there's going to be any blockage of that bypass lane, because that's really going to be the only way in for people that want to use any of the stores?
Actually, though.
So it is varying in width there. So you can see below the car wash queue, it's 20 feet wide. Above the car wash queue, it's 12 feet wide. So the intention there is, and we believe that 21 is more than enough. The ordinance is 10, we're at 21, so we feel like we're very comfortable with the queuing that's provided within the car wash space. But in that situation where it was just snow melt or a rainy day or something, and it's very crowded at the car wash, if it were to spill into that area, that's 20 feet wide as you come back towards the Route 10 entrance, so you could have a car queue and a car pass at the same
So
time.
is the intent to have it like a center line, to formally divide that into
It's
two
not
lanes?
delineated with the center line because we don't expect it to happen at high frequency, but with attendance there, we would be able to, whether we put cones out or guide people, it could be managed.
On the west side, on your drawing, you have to zoom out a little bit. There are arrows showing two-way circulation there. Is that intended or not? It goes two-way all the way to the back
Yes,
parking
because
lot.
so the parking there is 90 degrees, and again, if you get to a point where you get near Route 10 and there's not a spot, we'd rather not have to go back out onto 10 and try to make a left and a left to get back in. You can circulate throughout the site to find open spaces.
But from 10, that's exit only?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay.
Where's the point of payment?
So the point of payment is between cars 6 and 7. Those are the 2 points of payment for each lane. You can see the tan areas there. Those are concrete islands that will have the pay booth or pay station. Yes.
And there's a net reduction in spaces, but you're still above the minimum, correct? So you don't need a parking
That's
variance?
correct. That's
And-
correct.
And just to be clear, the vacuum spots don't count as spaces, right?
That's correct. So, and that's a good point. There's 83 spaces on the site.
Independent of the
The
vacuum
15 vacuum spaces are not within
Not
that
counted.
83
Okay.
calculation. Correct. And I'll just go back to a couple things I want to touch on with the vacuums, just because it was brought up in some of the review letters with regard to the noise from the vacuums. We have manufacturer specifications from VacuTech. They did their own sound readings, and I'll quote them for the board. They did readings from their equipment at 30 feet away at 38 decibels. And to give you some context, the state standards for noise levels at a residential receiving line are 65 decibels during the day and 50 decibels in the evening. And those hours are defined as 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. So all of our operations are during the daytime hours, which would allow, which is 65. Even at the nighttime of 50, we're at 38 at 30 feet away, and that equipment is about 35 feet from the property line. So we're very comfortable that we satisfy the noise standards from the state with that regard. Now, we talked about a lot of things through the questions, so I don't want to belabor some of the issues. There are a couple things I do just want to point out for the board and for the record. These were brought up in some of the review letters from your engineer and planner. From a grading and drainage standpoint, essentially we're maintaining the existing patterns of drainage, which is that it's going from north to south through the site. We are continuing to have it move generally east to west across. We have to get around the back of the building. There is very limited drainage infrastructure on site today, so we're very cognizant to have drainage patterns that don't create ponding and puddling. That's what the darker areas here are, where we are modifying the pavement grades to promote positive drainage throughout that area. As I mentioned, we're reducing the impervious coverage by over 6%. So from a stormwater standpoint, it's a net benefit by having areas of landscape and green area that will absorb groundwater and recharge that back into the ground. With regard to landscaping, you see again, we're on A3, you can see on the exhibit we have extensive landscaping throughout the area where we're redoing the car wash to provide screening and aesthetics around that area. We have several trees at the north side of the vacuum station, provide some shielding there. There was a comment in, I believe it was the planner's review letter. We will add some shrubs and plant material around the vacuum station here in order to provide a little bit of screening for that. Also, the entire parking area that's on the east side of the building, we're going to add shrubs and landscape material in that area to supplement that. The property is surrounded by a 6-foot stockade fence that provides screening. You can see there's also existing vegetation around the perimeter, and because of the grade change, there's very little visibility, if any, from the adjacent properties into the site.
Will there be any additional landscaping to the north and east for buffering of the residents back there?
There's none proposed. You can see several trees on our site throughout that area in addition to the wooded area. We have nothing proposed now. Looking at the grade differential and the fences there today, we see that there's probably minimal impact from it.
I think the planner had identified, if I'm not mistaken, 2 variances.
Yes.
One related to the 18-foot parking stalls. It's pretty obvious to me looking that a lot of them have 2-foot overhangs. Are there any specific number that you've identified that don't have the 2-foot overhang in terms of that you technically need a variance for?
We have, yes, and excuse me. So, as you know, the ordinance, 9 by 20 spaces, 18 is allowed if you have a 2-foot overhang. All of the spaces have 2-foot overhang with the exception of 6 spaces at the far southwest corner of the property where the curb is right next to the property line, so we can't count any overhang off the property.
Okay, so only 6 of the
Those are existing I'm sorry?
They're existing, and only 6 of the 85 would be variances.
Existing spaces, they've been operating like that for many years. Much of that area has a drive aisle that's wider than 24 feet, so we don't see any, I don't see any concern with maneuvering around those spaces if cars were parked there. The alternative would be to try to rebuild the parking along the west side, would push that parking field further north, eliminate some of the green space in that northwest corner, probably eliminate that tree that exists on the northwest corner, which I feel is you know, an unnecessary modification to the plan where you have an existing condition that functions well. The other variances are related to the signs. And I'll go through those. Right now, we have, there are 4 signs related to the Express Auto Spa. 3 of them are what we'd call wayfinding signs. And one is the existing sign. I'll go there first. There's an existing sign at the front of the site that is a small freestanding sign. It's not internally illuminated. It's not illuminated. It will be repaneled to advertise and to show the Express Auto Spa there. There's no change in that. The wayfinding signs are, there are, again, 3 of them. One will be as you pull into the site on the island that separates the 20 parking spaces for Epi's Restaurant and the car wash, so it'll have a left arrow and a straight arrow telling you where to go there. The next sign will be up near the entrance to the queue lane. That'll define that the car wash queue lane is to the left, and the final sign is near the vacuum area, identifying how to get into the vacuum area. Although the signs are 2 foot by 3 foot, so they're relatively small at 6 square feet, but they do have the logo for Express Auto Spa that makes them considered signs, not just internal wayfinding. So there are variances for those 3 signs. There's also...
Are they ground mounted or are they raised from the ground? You said they're 2 foot or 2 by 3.
They're raised off the ground several feet.
Okay.
Yeah, so if there
So
were
the
landscaping...
the overall height is?
I believe it's 7. I believe they're 5 clearance and then the 2 foot sign height.
So there's 7 feet.
5 under clearance, and then it's a 2 foot high by 3 foot wide panel. That'll be a total height of 7.
Is there a reason they have to be that high?
Part of it allows for, if there's landscaping around the base, it won't obscure the sign for driver visibility.
So so they're 7 feet tall, the sign? The sign itself.
I'm sorry. I stand corrected. I apologize. 5 total.
5 total,
I had
yeah.
my notes were wrong. I apologize.
Okay.
5 total, 3 clearance, which makes sense because typical shrub is 2 to 3 feet high, and then the 2 foot sign. And then one more feature that does not have any of the branding or logo on it, so it's not classified as a sign, is an overhead clearance bar. It's really as much a safety feature as anything else. It's at the entrance to the queue lanes. It does define members and non-member lanes, but the primary purpose is to have a clearance bar so that you're identifying, before a truck comes in, or someone with a ski rack or a bubble on top of the car before it goes through the wash. So that's really a safety feature, and there's no logos or branding on that.
And the logos on the wayfinding signs, I assume, is necessary or desired because of the multiple uses on the site, so it makes it clear this is the car wash. I mean, if you were the only thing on the site, you wouldn't have to have a logo on it.
Yeah, it's a small branding. I mean, the entire sign is only 2 by 3, and you have the text that say, car wash or Epi's or whatever,
Right.
and
Okay.
and the brand is low. It provides some color, and personally, I think it's a little bit of aesthetic interest on a sign rather than be black and white,
Sure.
to have some brand identification. Certainly not visible from the road, not visible from the residents, just a little bit more visual cue for what you're looking at.
And they're not illuminated, correct?
No.
Okay.
Correct.
And Mr. Fruit, it wasn't identified as a variance by the board planner professional, but there's an existing nonconformity, as I recall, with respect to the parking, a certain parking location being 14.9 feet from a residential area, whereas the code says 25. It's an existing condition,
That's right.
correct?
Yes, so the buffer of the parking to the residential is required at 25 feet, exists at 14.9 feet. So that's an existing condition that we're proposing to maintain.
Do you have a loading area or a screen trash area?
So loading for the car wash itself is minimal. They get deliveries of soap.
The only
Every
reason
other
I'm
month.
bringing them up is under the, under the ordinances, a loading area is required, and so is an enclosed trash area. So if you're not going to have them, I guess you'll just need, to request variances for those.
So, and I'll defer to the board on that, just by background. There is an existing loading and trash area in the courtyard of the building. That's where the loading and trash recycling occurs today for all of the uses, including the car wash. So the car wash trash will go into dumpsters. Trash for the entire site is managed by the landlord through the containers that are in that courtyard.
Okay, so there is a loading area, there is a trash area, so you don't.
There is a loading area there.
Okay, so you're not gonna, there are no variances needed for those then, okay.
Correct.
Go ahead, you ask.
Are there any signs on the building?
Not for the wash, no.
Okay.
Is there a sign at the entrance to the site,
Entrance to the,
to the site? Is there a sign for the car wash?
yes, so that's the first sign I described, and let's see if I can zoom in a little bit here. So there is a sign today between the entrance and the building along the frontage. That sign is probably about the same size as some of the directional signs, maybe a little bit larger, might be, 4 or 5 by 5. That exists today. It's not internally illuminated. It'll be repaneled to include branding for the Express Auto Spa.
What type of material is gonna be used for that?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
I
But it's
don't
going
know.
to be the exact same size.
So-
as the
similar
one that's
to-
out there. It's
very-
got-
yeah.
There's like 2 white posts and,
Yeah.
right, okay.
So there won't be any branding sign on the car wash building itself?
No.
I thought I saw something about stacked parking. Is there stacked parking on the site?
Stacked
Yeah, I thought I
parking?
read something, no? Okay,
No. Sometimes
So I-
I interchangeably use queuing and stacking, but
yeah, I
there's
thought
no
I saw in the
stacked
planner's
parking.
report, maybe I'm misremembering. But, okay, so there is no stacked parking, okay. And the lighting in the parking lot, how high are those?
We don't have an exact measurement. I would estimate that they're about 25 feet high. All of the lighting there is going to remain. There is one light fixture that, when we define the vacuum area, we have to move a fixture. I think it's about 6 or 8 feet to the east in that area just to be within the island.
So that, because 18-foot is shielded as maximum. I guess if they're higher than that, are you seeking a variance for that?
So I don't have an exact measure. I do notice an existing condition. We're not changing the height of the light. It's just being moved.
Well, he would still need a variance because of the site plan changes. Particularly if
Rudy?
he's moving the location.
Yeah.
He's moving the location. he
Well,
needs a
that's why
variance.
I'm asking about the height.
Yeah.
So how many light poles are there that you're moving?
There's only one being moved.
Just one?
Yeah.
And how many total are there?
I'm not sure off the top of my head.
So I guess you'll be seeking a variance for that then. That's the 18 to 25,
Assuming it's 25.
assuming.
Can you indicate where that particular pole is and where it's being moved?
So I'm going to start with A2 so that you can see on the plan. I'll zoom in the back. Between the spaces just to the right or east of the white car is where the pole is today. As we go to A3, that spot, it's being moved probably northeast, again, a few feet, and it exists today. It'll be proposed off the north edge of the vacuum stalls.
So it's going closer to the residents in the back and
It is going a little bit closer to the residents. It'll be about 60 feet from the nearest residential property line. So typically, the half-foot candle influence from a light is in the neighborhood of 45 to 50 feet on either side of a typical downward-facing light. So we don't expect that it would have a negative impact on the residents there. especially with the vegetation that's being provided around it to help provide some
Well,
shielding.
the vegetation will be a lot lower, right?
The what?
The vegetation will be a lot lower than the light.
The vegetation will be, yeah.
Yeah.
On the west side of the building, I'm sorry, west side of the building, are we changing any of the parking spots to, I just want to talk about the west side for a second, right there. Are there any parking changes to that side of the building?
There are, yes, and again,
Where are those?
so I'm going to jump to A2 briefly to show what's there today. There's parking facing the building. You can see a lot of cars parked in this area. It's really undelineated, though. So what we're going to do, and I'll move to A3, you can see we're delineating spaces. Again, we're providing curbed islands and delineation for spaces along the drive aisle, and then within the courtyard area, outside of where the loading activity will occur, we're providing spaces within there. Those would be typically available for employees out of there for a longer period of time.
Is there still going to be parking in front of, there's a current drugstore right there?
Yes.
Are those parking spots still remaining?
Yes, correct.
With the appropriate handicap?
7
numbers?
spaces that include two handicap, yeah.
Can I go back to that light pole for a minute? You don't know the exact height of the existing pole, is that correct?
Unfortunately, we don't. We don't have the specs on
Are you
that.
retaining the exact same pole, or are you replacing the pole?
Our intention is to retain the same one. So we would pour a new foundation, run conduit to it, and use the same pole.
Any thought to just make, is there a reason it has to be 25 feet high?
Reusing the same fixture. That,
And is it,
Sure.
shielded from, the spillover or just line of sight to, from the local, again, my concern is it's a we're not even quite sure the height.
right.
Moving it closer to the residents to the north and to the east, and the impact that might have on them. Just really a question and concern.
And I'll gratuitously muse out loud that the applicant, I think, would be okay if we were to come up with a new fixture that would be shorter in height.
That'll be compliant and shielded and,
Yeah.
okay.
So what are you proposing as far as the height of the pole?
As I understand, 18 feet and
18
shielded
feet is
what's
the
allowed,
ordinance. A maximum of 18. Above that, it's, variance is necessary. So if you can renew it with 18, then that would be, of 18 shielded, comply with the ordinance, then you don't need a variance then.
Yeah,
Okay, great.
we would do that.
Yeah. Perfect.
Thank you.
Excuse me, clarify something. You said that the position that you will move the pole to is about 30 feet from the residence? Is that what he?
60 feet.
How far away is the generator for the vacuums?
That is, I believe it's about 35 feet.
Well, how can that, I'm confused then. Could you point to the generator on the plan, please?
So the vacuums operate off a central
Yeah.
turbine. So that's located on this island here,
Oh, okay.
okay?
All
So
right,
each
so-
of these are just, there's a pneumatic tube that'll connect
Right, but-
there, that'll be the vacuum.
But
So
that's further away than the light post is going to be. So I think your numbers were across there. Okay.
well, we're looking at the side property
Oh,
line,
you're
right?
looking at the side property.
Yep. And it's a little bit deceiving because the side property line actually diverges away from the travel lane a little bit. So as you go north, it actually gets a little bit further away.
Yeah, but I think, I could be wrong, but the side property is more commercial than residential.
It is along Route 10, yes.
Right,
Yeah.
and behind the north side is residential, which is where the lamp post is going to be, 30 feet from their property. Okay.
Are there any other questions from the board?
Just then clarifying, as I'm keeping track, the variance would be no 2-foot overhang for 6 parking spaces along, which is a pre-existing condition.
Correct.
Buffer from parking, which again is a pre-existing condition. and then the ground-mounted signs.
And the signs,
having
yes.
logos. Okay. And are those, you're presenting those as C2, C1, C2, I assume? No, I don't want to assume.
They would be C2 variances.
Okay.
And in that
briefly address
case,
the
we would
criteria.
look at the positive, negative criteria.
Yeah,
Right,
just
so
quickly
from a
walk
sign
through that.
perspective, they provide important wayfinding. The branding and logo provide some additional cueing and identification of the use and the wayfinding throughout the site. So from a municipal land use standpoint, we're still providing adequate light, air, and open space throughout the site. We're improving circulation, and I believe purpose I also to promote a desirable visual environment throughout creative development techniques is advanced with the design of the signs. Again, negative impact. These are removed from Route 10, so there's no visual impact from Route 10. There's no visual impact from the neighbors. So there, in my opinion, there's really no negative impacts here. So with that, I do believe that the board could approve these without substantial detriment to the public good and without impairing the intended purpose of the zone plan.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the board for this witness? Before I ask the public, is there anything more from the witness that you have?
No, thank you.
Any questions from the public for this witness as to this witness's testimony? Seeing none, thank you.
And,
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Freud. So lastly, Mr. Chairman, we do have a traffic engineer with us tonight. I can seek to have him sworn in, but
That'd be great.
but it may or may not be necessary. I'll give the unorthodox, if the board would like to hear from the.
Why don't we
traffic-
just, the experts here, let's
Yep, okay,
put them
great.
on and, sure.
So, Mr. Chairman, with your permission, once he makes his way up, I'll seek to have Corey Chase from Dynamic Engineering sworn in and qualified as an expert in the field of traffic engineering.
You swear the testimony you give in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth.
I do.
Give us your full name and spell the last name and your affiliation.
Certainly, it's Corey, C-O-R-E-Y. Last name's Chase, C-H-A-S-E. I'm a principal with the firm Dynamic Traffic, Bachelor's of Science degree in Civil Engineering from the University of Massachusetts, licensed professional engineer in the state of New Jersey, and 6 other states, licenses currently in good standing. I've been qualified as an expert in traffic engineering before over 130 municipalities throughout the state, including the township on a previous occasion. I think it was during the pandemic. I'm pretty sure the last time I was with you guys, it was virtual, so it was definitely in the COVID era.
Well, welcome being in person.
Definitely. Happy to be back.
Any questions from the board? Thank you. The board accepts you as an expert in traffic.
Thank you. I appreciate
Thank you.
that.
Mr. Chase, if you could just give the board a very quick overview of the anticipated traffic and site circulation issues that you may have looked at in conjunction with the application.
Yeah, certainly our involvement in the application was to work with Mr. Frood as well as the applicant on really focusing on improving the overall site circulation and the stacking for specifically the car wash. As Mr. Frood noted today, the existing, and I'm referring to applicant's A3, the existing stacking occurs in that eastern drive aisle, so directly when you come off the ingress from Route 10. There's approximately 180 feet of stacking before you actually get to the Route 10 driveway today. That can accommodate between 8 and 9 cars. So, with a queue of more than 8 to 9 cars, you risk the potential for backing traffic actually up out onto Route 10. And looking at the site plan with, again, Mr. Frood and the applicant, that was our primary focus on how can we remedy that situation, how can we really improve that. One of the primary means was to flip the orientation of the car wash. So as was previously noted, currently today it goes from east to west, and the proposed condition will go from west to east. And what that allows us to do is better delineate and have a dedicated stacking area that has more than double the current stacking capacity of the car wash previously did, as well as really improve the overall site circulation. When you access the site today, and I'll go back to A2, there is, I would call it a unique circulation pattern on the eastern side of the building today. You have this triangular landscaped area. You also have a concrete island, which really is in the middle of the drive aisle, and it's to delineate between the car wash queue and the two-way circulation to the site. It's certainly unique. And then you have a lot of unusable asphalt area. So our focus was really to provide more parking directly adjacent to the stores, which you heard we were able to accomplish, and really provide a more dedicated circulation pattern. So it's defined as customers are coming into the site, whether they're going to the car wash or whether they're using the additional commercial uses. The site was formerly a car wash. We are proposing to redevelop it as a car wash. So from a traffic generation perspective, they would have the same numbers as the site did previously. What we think we're really doing here is we're providing a more efficient operation. We're eliminating the vacuum service from the tunnel operation, so that inherently just improves the efficiency of how the car wash is going to flow and function. And then again, as I mentioned, with the overall circulation improvements, we think it's a significant enhancement to the site. By providing that additional parking adjacent to the building, it's much better defined, as well as redistributing the ADA parking. As Mr. Frood mentioned earlier, currently all the ADA parking is located on the eastern side of the building. What we're doing is we're redistributing it so there's an equal amount of ADA parking on the east and west side of the building. I don't want to belabor my testimony, Mr. Chairman, but I'd be happy to answer any questions that the board has or anything that you think I may have missed.
Just the number under the existing conditions, how many what's the approximate car number queue?
You could get between 8 to 9 vehicles in this area today. So we're more than double that, and then we're also removing it from that drive aisle. So, and like your Mr. Frood mentioned, on the very rare occasion that you did have more than 21 cars in this queue lane, we do have the ability, we have the manager, we also have other service personnel on site, so they would be able to direct traffic to make sure it remains orderly. And with the 20-foot drive aisle, that's sufficient. You could, in theory, stack cars in this drive aisle and still have room to bypass that. So with the manager and staff on site, we would make sure that in the rare event that that was to occur, that all those stacked vehicles were to queue in an orderly fashion and allow traffic to continue to free flow.
Thank you. Any questions from the board?
Yeah, and again, this was sort of touched upon earlier. In terms of pedestrian, anyone parking in those rear lots, do you have a thought in terms of interacting with cars and how they safely navigate from those spaces? Where would you envision them walking without?
Much in the same manner that they do today, only in a more direct fashion. As I mentioned, in going back to Exhibit A2, there is the parking to the rear today, but again, it's really just an entire mass of asphalt back there, so it's much less controlled. So if they're parking in here, you're navigating these drive aisles. You could do it in a more direct fashion, certainly, but you're crossing multiple points of conflict in really an uncontrolled manner. And the proposed condition with the curb and the landscaping that's provided, that's delineating the vacuum stalls as well as the car wash parking, it's going to provide a more delineated path for those pedestrians in the rear, and you're removing, the queue and all those potential vehicle conflicts from interacting with that. So they can continue to use the drive aisles to circulate. I just think it'll be in a more direct fashion.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, let me go back to that because it's bothering me.
Your mic, Sam.
Microphone.
Can you just turn your mic? That's okay.
Thanks, Richard.
Having eaten in that restaurant and parked in the back, when they're, I guess you got 15 spaces or whatever are full, it's a straight shot down to the restaurant. To go across the back, out to Route 10 and all the way across, isn't gonna work.
And
So there's got to be a way to figure out something safe, whether it's markings on the driveway, whether it's some sidewalk somewhere. I'm very concerned about that.
I think we certainly do provide a safer route of travel, where today you're just cutting through the parking lot. I agree that it's closer.
Today's gone.
It is, and that's why we look to really improve what we're doing here. I know Mr. Frood mentioned that we'd be willing to work with the engineer on whether we can stripe striped an area adjacent to the curb that kind of provides a delineated areas for pedestrians. But providing additional parking up front, you're going to have the additional stalls directly adjacent to the building. There is sidewalk along all faces of the building. So you will have an additional opportunity to, park closer and have a dedicated pedestrian pathway, to all the commercial areas within the building. And again, by, providing this curbing and landscaping and really delineating this area, you're providing a more defined path for pedestrians to travel. So I think it'll become more familiar for patrons of the building, where today you can essentially park anywhere in that rear parking lot and travel whatever path you choose to get to the building. where now it'll be more defined with the curbing of the grass and the delineated area for the queuing.
Yeah, Mr. Ratner makes actually a valid point, and I agree with Sam. You know, I guess my fear would be is that you're going to get some of these people walking through the vacuum, where the vacuums are. When they're parked back there, they're not going to really know not to walk through the vacuum. I guess my question would be, any chance of putting a sidewalk on the east side, somewhere on the east side over there, so there is a designated walking path for, on that grass strip or somewhere, so people at least, so everybody knows that that's where to walk, and they just have to cross over at one spot. I guess that would be I think an easy way just to handle some of the concerns, if possible.
Yeah. I don't know what the actual grading is in that area. I'll defer to Rob if there are any grading concerns. Obviously, if you provide a sidewalk and a dedicated pedestrian path, it needs to be ADA compliant. You know, I think situations like this, it's typical to walk through drive aisles in these types of facilities. It's pretty commonplace in commercial centers that the majority of your pedestrian movements occur within the actual parking area. And again, as I mentioned, you know, it was when we reviewed this with Mr. Frood's office in delineating this area, we felt like it was going to be an improvement because it was going to provide a more defined area for those pedestrians to travel, whereas today, you know, they can essentially cut through any of the parking areas that they want. But I know Mr. Frood's looking at it right now. It's something he's coming up to provide an answer.
The concern from a site perspective with putting it on the east side, that's buffer area. We have some flexibility with impervious coverage, so we could add some of the 6% back, so there's room from a coverage standpoint to add sidewalks there, walkways there, but that's the buffer area to the, you know, that's required. So we would then be creating a variance condition. Right now, that east line, that is the existing curb today, so we're looking to maintain that curb line. So I think if we were to do something, it would be more along the lines of sort of like you might see a bike path on the road where it's striped there. It's within the traveled lane, but at least it gives some delineation to it.
Yeah, that was kind of where I think we were going with our original discussion is I think we'd be amenable to providing some additional striping along this curb line here, which anybody who was parked in the northeast corner of the site, they would then have an area that was delineated to encourage them to walk adjacent to the curb line and then be able to circulate around as you head south towards the commercial area.
Yeah, I think what everybody's getting at is just, you know, encouraging, you know, any pedestrians that park in the back from just trying to cut through the queue line. And I think that's the, you know, where the existing condition doesn't have that queue line in the back, so you can walk through without, you know, worrying about that. So I think, you know, however you might be able to delineate, you know, just encouraging pedestrians. And look, quite frankly, I think if you're parking in the back and you're walking, you see all these cars that are queued there, you're going to go around it. But I think you can, you know, just, you know, maybe encourage it so that you don't have, you know, people can kind of go off on their path around the building, you know, earlier.
Yeah, certainly, and I think what we just mentioned, I think by striping a delineated area adjacent to the curb and highlighting that that's the area intended for pedestrian travel would, as you mentioned, Mr. Chairman, would really reinforce the fact that they should travel as they head south to, you know, sort of in a southwest direction against that curb line to get to the building instead of trying to go straight through the vacuum stalls and across that
cars,
queue.
it helps visually, just they know not to drive over the hatched area. So.
Exactly.
I don't know that we're going to resolve that, but so potentially a condition to work that out with the
engineering.
engineer.
Yeah.
Condition work out.
Yeah, we would agree to condition to come up with a solution acceptable to the board's engineer to stripe.
Is there any lighting provided on the east side of the building if pedestrians are using that area?
I'm going to defer that to Mr. Frood.
I believe there is today. Again, we don't have we don't have lighting specs or lighting plans for what's there today. but there's no intention to change the conditions.
As a safety feature, should lighting be added in that area for pedestrian use after dark?
The primary pedestrian routes are directly adjacent to the building, so you will have, the light from the building casting on the sidewalk. So I think those areas
What
will be.
light from the building will reach the sidewalk on the east side?
The east side of the building, you have the existing tenant spaces in there that are going to be illuminated, so those will cast. I don't believe that there are any building-mounted lights currently today. Again, Mr. Frood would be able to clarify that.
And Mr. Chase, I'd ask you to opine on this. In terms of if the car wash operations, the maximum would be 6 p.m. in the summer and 5 p.m. in the winter. Would that diminish the chance of pedestrian vehicular conflicts, at least related to the car wash operation?
Certainly, again, as we heard, the hours of the car wash are intended to primarily be during daytime only. So they close a little bit earlier in the winter with darkness reaching earlier, so very limited car wash activity at dusk.
That wasn't the point of the question. The point of the question was whether lighting is needed on the side if pedestrians the evening have to use the rear parking area.
And again, it wasn't our intent was to maintain the existing lighting. It's been functioning in that capacity today. As we heard, we agreed to reduce the size of that existing light pole to lower that light. So what that'll do is it'll cast a wider array internal to the site because it's lower in nature. I don't believe, in my professional opinion, that any additional lighting is necessary in that area.
Well, where's the closest lighting on the east side in relation to the restaurant?
And again, those are really site engineering related questions, so I'm gonna defer to Mr. Frood for those.
Again, we don't have exact lighting specs there. Our focus was the car wash operations and the modifications related to the car wash. The additional operations of the site and lighting for the site would fall under the landlord purview, so we don't have all the details on that.
But you're making major changes to the site, so these issues really are appropriate.
Well, could you even change the lighting on the tenant area?
I'm sorry, I missed that question.
Would you be able to change the lighting in front of the tenant's area? I mean, I'm asking the question. I mean, I don't know whether the tenant would authorize that.
Yeah, that may be beyond, candidly, the scope of our ability to,
Right.
Improve the car wash.
But so whatever existing lighting has, at least for however long it's been there, been adequate presumably for people to park anywhere in that parking lot and find their way. And the only one you're changing is to move the one and lower it slightly.
That's correct. The only light that we're proposing to change, all the existing lights will be remaining in their current configuration, in their current locations. The lighting pole in the northeast corner is the only one that's moving, and I believe Mr. Frood said it's about 6 feet of a relocation, and we agreed as a condition to replace that light pole with something that's in conformance with township standards.
And even moving that light wasn't creating, any illumination in front of
The business.
That's correct. It's solely intended to
Right.
illuminate the rear parking area.
So kind of a random question, but presumably some of the businesses in the deli may operate hours later than, say, the car wash. So if the car wash is closed and someone's leaving the deli, how are they going to know not to turn down the car queue thinking they're exiting, that's the shortest point out, and then get to the end and turn around? And because it's clearly marked.
It is clearly marked, but there is a bypass essentially. So if someone was to turn down that lane by mistake after hours, they would be able to
get out.
To get out, yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions from the board? Any questions from the public for this witness as to this witness's testimony? Seeing none. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That concludes obviously our presentation, and I won't belabor the board with a closing statement. I think we've hopefully addressed the board's concerns in terms of the proposed improvements to the site, and as you heard Mr. Freud testify to the positive and negative criteria in support of the variances that are being requested.
Thank you. And just for the record, any members of the public here to give sworn testimony in favor of or in opposition to this application? Seeing none, thank you. There were a couple of other conditions I just wanted to go through that were in, I think, either the planning review letter or the engineering letter. First was the Hudson Essex Passaic approvals to be submitted to engineering prior to the issuance of building permits. The fire department to review the site circulation and site improvements for emergency access. A pre-construction meeting with engineering, and I guess otherwise comply with the engineering memo of November 20th. Is there any problems with any of those?
Actually, Mr. Chairman, with respect to the last one you mentioned, compliance with the engineering standard, there were actually, I think they're in the form of recommendations, so I just don't want there to be any confusion on the record. There's a item number on the technical review comments on page.
Do you have any problems with them just being conditions of approval if this is approved?
So the two I just wanted to flag so there's no confusion. There's a recommendation number 4. I think it's on page 3 of the document under the site plan technical review comments about the vacuum stall parking area. There's a consideration of extending a drive out. We don't believe that's necessary, so we wouldn't want to agree. I'd suggest that we're agreeing to comply with that.
Okay.
And then similarly, there's a recommendation number 1 on the grading, drainage, and utility plan. There's a recommendation about considering additional storm collection inlets. We wouldn't believe that is necessary.
Okay.
Otherwise, I believe we're.
Otherwise, everything else is okay?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, the parties having had the opportunity to make, or in this case, waive closing statements, it appears to the chair that the applicant, all interested persons, and board members have had a reasonable opportunity to be heard, and that the evidentiary record of this hearing ought to be closed. Absent objection, and in the absence of any motion for continuance, the evidentiary record is closed, and no further testimony or evidence shall be heard or received. So the board shall now have the opportunity to state and discuss their views on this application.
Yes.
Want to go?
Me.
That's it.
You turn your mic on, so
As I
We
guess
thought it
you,
was you, Sam.
I guess, and Diner's not here. As I guess
That's why it's only 9:10.
you've realized by now that I'm very concerned about the safety of people that would park in the back. And I know very well that they're not going to do this, and this to walk all the way around that building. It's a long, long way to get to that restaurant if you're going to go all the way around. So I'd like to hold my vote until I see what you plan to do to make it safer, whether it's markings, a curb, whatever. I just don't feel it's safe. Right now, when the car wash was operating, if you parked in the back, you had basically one driveway to cross. You didn't have the whole maze thing. Now you've got a number of traffic areas that one has to walk past and through to get to the restaurant or the front of the building. So I'm concerned about it.
I share, I think, Mr. Ratner's concern. I'm, I think, comfortable that the board engineer, who's also township engineer, can work with your professionals to develop a safe pedestrian sort of plan. I am, satisfied. I think that the applicants met their burden on the variances, particularly since 2 of the 3 were pre-existing conditions anyway, 4 C2 variances. happy to say, I think it is a site in need of major upgrading, and it's good to see an adaptive reuse rather than another apartment building. We have like apartment overload, so anything that preserves the commercial uses, I'm in favor of. So with that in mind, and subject to the conditions that we talked about, I'd be in favor of the application.
So is there a motion to approve or disapprove?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
To approve, including the variances and subject to the conditions that have been stated on the record.
And I'll second that. I like the plan. I think there may be something you can do behind the parking spaces up at the top where the green is, and you'll come up with something, I'm sure. It's really nicely done. Thank you.
Yeah. Is there a discussion, or is that already?
Whatever comments you.
Okay, so there's a couple things. First of all, I just want to thank the applicant and his attorney for, this has been a long process getting here as well. So I appreciate your patience. I happen to agree with Mr. Lewis that this is a great use. It keeps us out of the residential or the multifamily residential areas. So we certainly appreciate this continuing the commercial zone that it is. I guess my only question I would ask the applicant is that once everything is finalized, or even now after this, maybe this vote will go through, is that they have a chance to discuss it with the other tenants in this building. There is certainly a fair amount of retail that goes on right now in that building, whether it be in the restaurant on the east side and the drugstore on the west side, and both get used, pretty regularly by a whole bunch of people. I mean, during the week, especially on the drugstore side. And I just would like to, as a suggestion, if, as a good new neighbor moving into the area, if you could just, show the plans and maybe see that everybody's improved so there's no shock to the system when they see this going on. That's my only comment, but thank you.
I want to thank you for a well-presented application. Thank you for that. And thank you for both the experts. Their testimony was helpful, so thanks for that. Also, I think we express the same concerns that Sam has expressed, but I think working with our township engineer and your professionals, I'm sure that there'll be some sort of appropriate markings in order to keep the pedestrians, walking in the directions that you kind of want them to walk in, and to keep them safe, and to keep the last thing we want to see is anybody using that facility getting hurt. Not sure that you don't want that either. So,
Mr. Chairman, can that
Yes,
be
sir.
a condition?
That is, they're going to, yeah.
Good, okay.
That is, Sam, yes. Yes, thank you.
There's a motion on the table. Mr. Lewis?
Yes.
Ms. Cucci?
Yes.
Mr. Ratner?
Yes.
Mr. Meinhardt?
Yes.
Chairman Fernandez?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries.
Yeah, there was. It was.
Yes,
it was
Ms.
Ann.
Cucci. Mr. Chairman, that concludes our agenda items for this evening.
Thank you. With that, thank you very much, and we are done before 9:15.
Thank you, everyone.
Who wants to do Richard's motion to adjourn? Or else we're staying. Thank you. Thank you, Sam.